Hey there everyone, Monica Bodierski here, artist and author of the Shadowland Tarot and the House of Shadows Lenormand, and a few upcoming oracles, I hope. I've been working away, but you know, deadlines, my goodness, you start to lose track of time and everything else. I'm trying to release something fairly big, at least every 6 months to every year, but that really requires a whole lot of focus and concentration. So please be patient to all you wonderful folks who've asked, when is the next deck out? I'm trying. I'm getting there. So thank you. Thank you, though, for your enthusiasm and wanting another deck. Thank you to all those who've supported me by purchasing decks. One is from Schiffer Publishing, Red Feather, Mind, Body, and Spirit. They are my publisher, not my printer, the publisher, which means they distribute, and they've also put out the money to produce the tarot deck. My self-published decks are the House of Shadows Lenormand. I print and publish and design those by myself, and you'll find a lot of professionals out there doing both. They create quite a nice balance. We'll talk about that in another video. So for those of you who are new to this channel, I like to talk tarot, cartomancy, divination in general, specifically tarot and Lenormand, but I also talk about bone and curio casting and all sorts of oracle cards that I enjoy. So if you've come back again, thank you for returning. Thank you. Clearly you found something of use here, and or I'm just amusing you. Either way, thank you for returning. So, in this evening's video, I'd like to talk to you about, well, professional tarot. 3 tips to becoming a professional reader. I offer a lot of tarot tips, and some of them overlap. Some of them I will get into more detail than others, and there are tons of tips out there from lots of professionals. Please look around. It's just one person's opinion here, and my advice. But there's so many. Go out there and check it out. Okay, speaking of personal experience, we are talking about when you've decided you're going to become a professional reader and maybe go beyond a family member who says, "Oh, that was so amazing." Now you're ready. You're ready to go out in public. Frequently, you will be reading in venues like cafes or for people at parties, all sorts of spots. And one of the first things I want to say is make sure you have a deck that you're comfortable with. That seems ridiculous, but I can tell you, when I first started reading for people professionally, I was a bit torn at times between, whoa, this deck is so cool looking, you know, they're going to be so impressed, I'm a real reader, and my go-to deck, which is like, oh, it's just a standard deck, it doesn't have all that exciting, I don't know, it's just not that exciting looking. So, of course, I took a deck that had a little more, you know, funk to it, and then I realized, though I hadn't read with them quite as much, and it certainly wasn't my first deck, I was a very proficient reader. Oh my gosh, I read for at least 15, maybe even 20 years before I really started to do it professionally, for many reasons, and I'm not suggesting you need to wait that long by any means, but it might make you think twice if you've only been reading for 6 months and think you're ready to read professionally. That might be pushing it a little bit. It does take practice, somewhere in between there. So I started with decks that were really flashy, and when you're starting, you can get into that deer in the headlights thing where everything just goes out of your mind because there's a person who's paid you money sitting across from you going, and suddenly you're just going like, hey, what's that? And the last thing you want is cards that you've barely used, that new deck that'll make you look, and you haven't a clue what some of those cards are actually saying, or you forget. Even the most simple, I know exactly what the 5 of Swords means, but an artist has a completely different interpretation, and you're going, this means that. And yes, I have sounded about like that many times. Quickly recovered, of course, and oh, what did I just drop on the ground? Oh, here we go. It's stressful enough when you really care and you want to make sure someone's getting their money's worth and a really good reading experience. You get so caught up in wanting to deliver that it can be very stressful. So remember to take a deep breath. Remember, the person getting the reading is often much more nervous than you are, wondering if you're going to flip over the death card immediately. So make yourself comfortable and them and pick a simple deck. Okay? Maybe even one that they're familiar with, which is often just the standard Rider-Waite-Smith. I know when I started out and people saw that, they went, oh, I've seen these cards before. That made them feel at ease, in turn making me feel at ease. You know how that goes. So just think about it. Just think about that, because, there's so many decks now to choose from. You should be comfortable. Okay, that was tip number 1. Choose a very simple, straightforward deck that you're familiar with. If you are familiar with one of the lesser known decks, but that is the one you learned with and that you use all the time, well, that's fine. That it doesn't need to be familiar to the client. I'm just saying, pick a deck that you know so well that even with a bit of nerves, you're not going to get thrown off track. Okay, what is tip number 2? Okay, tip number 2. Right. Sometimes you don't have control over the lighting of the venue you're reading in, and a lot of times tarot readers are reading in the evenings or in dark cafes or in the far corner of a restaurant and or at poorly lit parties who want that spooky atmosphere. It's a thing. And you've decided to pick a really dark deck, and you can't really see it. And you're like holding it up to the candle, or, you're whipping out your phone flashlight. Really, it's not very professional looking. And even with a lot of candles at your table, it can be very, very difficult. Some decks, don't read well in dim light because of the coloring, because of how fine the print may be, because they're Roman numerals, and you've just forgotten every Roman numeral you knew inside out yesterday, but now it's dark and they're this big. And also highly detailed decks, like really, really intricate cards, can be very, very tricky in the dark or dim light. Okay, so in case you're going someplace in the evening to do your reading, or you're in a venue or an event that may not be as well lit as you're hoping for, or don't say bring your own lights to your own table, check ahead of time with the venue. And also, maybe take a couple decks, have a backup, and turn your lights really dim at home and check out the cards. I've done that after having, done the hard way, and just like shocked at how badly I could not see the imagery. And, I couldn't tell if it was the 5, 6, or 7 of swords. It was a very esoteric deck, so the action of the deck wasn't really apparent, and it was a super gloomy deck. Love dark decks, I do. But it was really, really unnecessarily difficult. So keep that in mind. Keep a light-colored deck, or check the lighting of wherever you're reading. That was tip number 2. You've got to know your lighting and how your deck is going to look. Don't make it difficult on yourself. Kind of goes with number 1 with pick your deck, but that's sort of a subcategory, okay? Okay, what else do we have? Number 3. Now, I've mentioned this before. Tips for professional readers. I get that you are who you are, and sometimes we don't want to change who we are in the least. But some of our decks and our deck imagery may not be appropriate for the broader public you're reading for. If you're reading for a group of friends at a very specific event where you pretty much know your clientele is going to fit into a very specific category, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about frequently at public events where you are a reader or you're going to a party, you really don't know what people are going to be like. Chances are they're going to come from a broad range of backgrounds, religious beliefs, or cultural, norms, and your deck may have imagery that is really inappropriate. And I'm not judging it inappropriate. I'm saying I've felt really quite poorly when I want to give a reading to somebody and I can see that sweat beads are running down their face from the kind of images. No, I don't have people with severed heads or, extreme nudity. I'm just saying some imagery. It can be you're reading for a whole group of pagans and you have a highly Christian deck with crucifixes, and there are religious themed decks out there, right? So just consider that. You can ask, but you never really know. And when I was reading in a shop, beautiful little shop here in our fine city, they were walk-ins. And while it was a new age shop, you'd be surprised how many people are not in the least new age. They are seeking advice, though, and they're open-minded, but when confronted with certain imagery, they're like, very, very uncomfortable. And again, in turn, you may be uncomfortable. Hey, I applaud those of you who are totally insensitive to the feelings of others in this case. However, we are often here as professional readers to make people feel comfortable in the very least and open to the advice we're offering. So maybe a modicum of whatever you consider sensitive in this regard might be a good idea. What decks wouldn't I take? You're asking yourself, well, Monica, what is a really inappropriate deck? Right? This is where everyone always goes when I say this. Well, I don't know. Maybe there is a deck with full-on nudity and people are really uncomfortable with some naked dude who's super, endowed. I'm just saying, I've seen people turn beet red and crumble over that, and they just can't hear a word I'm saying. It's distracting for some, maybe not for others, and maybe you're laughing because you think that's kind of juvenile, but people have different things that make them uncomfortable. Look, my deck is relatively lighthearted, right? You know that it's fairly whimsical, but I can tell you, I'm not going to dig through the whole thing here, but I do have spiders in here. Yes, they're kind of and I'm digging through the deck anyway. They're kind of lighthearted, whimsical. Here we go. I had to find it, okay? The nine here, it's whimsical spiders, and it's about nightmares. You know what? It disturbs some people. Am I going to not read with my deck? No, because I'm really comfortable with it. But I am fully aware that even in whimsical form, there are people who are going to be a little upset about spiders. I've asked people, are you arachnophobic? Do you have any extreme fears for spiders? And, some do, believe it or not. So, there you go. 3 tips, all right? First one, pick a deck you're comfortable with and you read with well. Number 2, check the lighting of wherever you're going to be reading and make sure that you can see your cards in dim light. It will always happen. And number 3, pick a deck other people may be comfortable with, or at least give it some consideration. Thank you so much for tuning in. thank you for listening to these 3 pro tips. I have plenty of more. Stick around for the other videos. Remember, if you'd like some readings, please go to IGTV and Instagram, and you can find plenty of personal readings there in pick a pile, 1, 2, or 3. Until next time, please have yourselves a really safe week. Don't forget to comment, subscribe, like, and I hear you have to hit a bell for notifications. So hit that bell. Okay, everyone. Thanks again. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.